Welcome to this week's edition of the Belau Report. I'm Jane Belau. Our guest this week is Rochester's new city councilman, Mark Bransford. And he was last on this program when he was running for office, and we welcome you as a councilman.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's been a pretty crazy 18 months. Particularly running for office during the height of COVID. It was, no door knocking, so I tried to get a little creative and put letters indoors and walked the neighborhoods quite a bit. But it was worth it. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. It has its frustrations and its joys. So,
when you say you enjoy what you're doing, but the frustrations are great?
Yep. I think anybody, and this is probably one of the things that I didn't realize about being an elected official is it's wonderful to help people. That is one of the things that I like the most, is you get somebody emailing you and saying, I got this fine, can you help me take care of it? Or there's a bunch of rusty cars in the neighborhood, in the neighbor's lawn, can you help me take care of it? So those things are great. I really ran to help people. The frustrations are more at a higher systematic level of, all of the things and changes that we're going through in the city. Quite a few I question, and when I try to bend the curve one way or the other, and I can't, that gets a little frustrating, but it doesn't mean I'll stop trying.
Wow. Well, introduce yourself to our viewers, since this is your first official interview.
Okay. My name is Mark Bransford. I'm Ward 2 representative, newly minted. My background is I have an undergraduate degree in physics, a PhD in astrophysics. Now I do AI research for Mayo Clinic. I have 4 kids. My oldest has Down syndrome, so that has its challenges. And I ran for office because I just got tired of throwing my shoe at the TV and wanted to do something and change some things, the way that the city is growing and moving along. I'm also just newly appointed to the Special Education Advisory Panel at the state level. And I had our first orientation there, and I don't know if I'm on the Olmsted County subcommittee yet, but I did apply for that. And I think there's a lot we can do in the special education realm here in Rochester. It's fantastic, but there's always room for improvement. So I'm a big advocate for kids with special needs. So that's also a passion of mine. And my wife told me I'm completely crazy for biting off all of that, but we as citizens either step up or we take a ride, and I decided to step up.
Well, that's really a good enough reason to do it. And what was your biggest surprise when you went to your first meeting?
Well, I'd been to a lot of city council meetings as a neighborhood advocate, so I kind of got what was essentially the process. I think the biggest surprise is just the eclectic nature of this new council. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. We're a really interesting mix of perspectives, and it's kind of nice. When you're very uniform, you kind of see together as a group in a very uniform way. And even if you disagree, if you're more less homogenous, you say, when someone gets done talking, you go, wow, I really didn't think about it that way. So sometimes my votes have actually changed during a deliberation because they have convinced me, well, maybe I thought about that a little differently. I would make a different vote. Hasn't happened a lot, but that was a good surprise. Let's put it that way.
Are you finding the council in any way like the Minneapolis City Council, which has really change the direction of the city?
Actually, I think there are some of us on the city council that would really like to bend the trajectory. However, I think the city council is still kind of going down the path of really embracing the major initiatives and all of the I don't want to, and all of what that entails, right? So I was hoping that the council would bend the curve a little bit more one way or the other, whether it be housing or, you know, the effects of DMC on the inner neighborhoods, or, you know, how we grow the city on the edges versus how we grow it downtown. And so far, that's probably been my biggest frustration, is how we're sprinkling density and I believe overbuilding certain kinds of housing at the expense of others. And so I'm hoping that I can convince my colleagues that, you know, maybe we do need a little bit of a shift in thought. And I think I saw that a little yesterday and during our study session, where I think we started to see as a council, yep, you know, maybe we do need to make it a little easier to build single-family homes on the edge of town. That was really welcome to me.
Yeah, it will probably be very welcome to the majority of people who live in the city.
Yeah. The census data, the preliminary census data that I saw showed that the townships and the outlying towns are growing a lot. 13% in Rochester and quite a bit bigger percentages elsewhere. And of course, that's a numbers game. 13% of 100,000 is still a lot. But you know, the question I want to ask is, let me disambiguate that 13%. How many of it is just people having babies, or how much of it is people moving into town? I met someone recently that has a fairly important position in town, who rented and tried to look for a house and just gave up and moved to Byron. And I heard that a lot.
Can't find an affordable one, you mean?
Yeah, they wanted a single family home that they could afford with a backyard. But almost all the housing that we're building right now is, even on the edges of town, apartment buildings and density and whatnot. And that's really troubling to me, because if you study the effects of converting single-family homes into single-family rentals or Airbnbs, or if you build a lot of market-rate apartments, there has been a lot of study in Minneapolis about, well, what does that mean? What's the effect of that? And what's interesting is everybody says, well, it's an equity thing. If we want to build all these apartments and we need housing and we need it for, you know, equity reasons. Well, it turns out that if you overdo rentals, you actually widen the gap between white people and black people in terms of equity and generational wealth. And that's starting to become more and more obvious. So it's fine if we want to build duplexes and fourplexes and stuff, but they need to be things we can purchase. And I think the Rochester Area Foundation, First Homes, the county, the first three bullets is ownership, ownership, ownership. And that's really a change, and I hope the city embraces that as well.
So what will be the role of the city in doing that?
Well, collaboration, ponying up some money, helping the county and First Homes and the Rochester Area Foundation monetarily, so that maybe, here's an example. There's an empty lot that I was recently at a meeting with them. They want to build a duplex or a fourplex, but the land's very expensive. So what the city could do is come in and say, you know, we'll buy the land or help you pay for it so that whatever it is you build there is less expensive, so that someone that comes in there, that could be an affordable first home or something to that effect. So I don't know what the details would be. I think we're going to work through those. But it's something like that where the city could help a lot.
Does the council have a committee that's working on that, on affordable housing?
There is one council member who is a part of the Rochester Area Foundation, so I wouldn't call that a committee, but we do have a presence at the table, yes. And hopefully that's a good place to start.
Wow. Are you going to run again? It's a little early.
Yeah, it's a little early.
Tell me about the transportation, those little vehicles that are driving around downtown with a guy in them who's trying to teach them the vehicles, the route, and they're going to operate as without drivers.
Oh, you mean those little itty bitty clown cars? Yeah, I've seen a couple. I don't know how ubiquitous those will become. I'm not a big fan of some of I'm not a fan of Lime scooters. I'm not a fan of all of the bike lanes downtown. And I know that's an unpopular point of view, but they just don't have the ridership. And something came up last night where some of the businesses along these bike paths wanted to keep metered spots so people could come in and go out, right? I don't know if the idea is I'm going to go to this restaurant, I'm going to jump on a Lime scooter, go downtown, park it, eat at a restaurant, get back on that Lime scooter and go home. But there is plenty of parking, granted, in some of the parking ramps. But there's also something to be said for pull in, pull out. You've ordered food, you go in, you don't want to walk 3 blocks. So I think that maybe there's a happy medium there. I know people do ride bikes, but I kind of look askance at some of these newfangled ways of getting around.
I think the ones that we have to care about are those who are visiting our Mayo Clinic and our Homestead group from out of town, because they get so confused by what are bike lanes and what are parking lanes.
Yep. Yeah. No. I mean, and again, don't get me wrong. I'm not anti-bike lane. I think they have their place. I'm talking downtown mostly.
Yeah.
I think that there could be many ways to make that work a little better. You know, a parking lot for bikes on the edge of town where you put there and chain it up and then you walk in as a pedestrian. I don't know. That's likely not an argument I will ever win. So that's okay.
Many people on the council are bike riders.
Well, there are some, and I believe there are some also who kind of look askance at some of the bike lanes downtown and in other places, but I'm not going to speak for them. You know, I can hear people clicking and clacking on the keyboards. He's anti-bikes, and I'm not. I have a bike, my kid's bike, love Cascade Lake. It's just when it gets to be sort of this miasma of cars and bikes and Lime scooters and uneven sidewalks that, you know, you can't push a wheelchair on. You know, I mean, listen to Paula Harden. She could tell you all about how downtown is not, you know, disability friendly, and she's right. I would agree with her on that.
Okay, from your perspective, what's the greatest problem facing the city of Rochester right now?
Honestly, I think it's a very imbalanced growth right now. We're focusing all our energy so much on density and market rate apartment buildings, and I'm really afraid that we're going to wind up like Minneapolis, which has only a 48% home ownership. It's below 50%, and that's not what we want to do. So I'm hopeful that we can extend our sewer lines and extend our infrastructure so that, you know, builders would be enticed to make housing on the edge of town and housing that people can buy. Note I said housing, all types of housing, not just single family homes, but all types. But we need ownership options. And right now it's just not we're not seeing that in the numbers that we should be. And so I'm actually really concerned what is going to happen is that the inner neighborhoods, Kutsky, Slatterly Park, Falwell, Historic Southwest, are going to be so utterly changed by intrusive development that they're going to lose their character. And along the way, we're not building the kind of housing we need, a la housing people can buy. If on the other hand, in these neighborhoods, you could build something a little more sedate, like a 2-plex or a 4-plex, or maybe even a 6-plex with condos you can buy, then you have people moving in that have buy-in to the neighborhood. And I'm not anti-rentals, I'm not anti-renters, despite what people have said. I have renters surrounding me, and they're delightful people. I'm talking about I'm talking about the blueprint for how we grow this city.
Yeah.
And I went to the Safe City Nights in Edison, and I had a lot of people come up to me and said, "What's up with all the rentals?" And so it's not just me, and it's not that we're somehow anti-minority people who tend to rent more. That statement itself is true and is actually why we need to build housing people can buy, whether it be on the edge of town, along these transportation corridors, or whatever. Come on in. Let's let them build equity and wealth, generational wealth. What gets people's goats is people come and go. And in the inner city, a lot of it, in the inner neighborhoods, a lot of it are dorms for Mayo Clinic. So, and they're all market rate. So when people say we are creating this housing for a particular demographic, we're really not anyway. So it's a very complicated problem. I have very strongly held opinions about it, as you can tell. And I do have some ideas how we can help fix the problem. We have Minneapolis as a shining example of what we don't want to do. And we keep saying, well, Rochester's the Minneapolis of the South. And I keep, well, no, we don't want that. We don't.
I'm just processing everything that you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense. And how do you get the builders incentivized to build more affordable housing? I know you said the city could, say, buy the land and help the builders that way, but you have more ideas?
Well, yes. Buying the land was just an idea. Rochester Area Foundation could articulate that much more clearly than I could. So one way is just to give money, or to, somebody asked for $5 million last night from the Rochester Area Foundation. 3 in cash, I think 2 in kind. The in kind would be to maybe make it easier to scrape a house out and put in a 4-plex. The big thing is, and this is really boring to most people, but if you read the sewer master plan, and yes, that's really boring, but really, if you think about it, where development is where the infrastructure goes, where the sewer lines go. And there is something called a trunk fee, which is a one-time hookup fee. And right now, builders have to pay like $15,000 per square acre just to have a plot of land where they can create housing. And there are a lot of fees and whatnot that I think we could really reduce in order to incent the builders to come in and go, okay, now the fees are reasonable, and so we're gonna go ahead and build. And maybe that'll happen with the trunk fees anyway, and we're gonna see if the builders buy off on the next $3 million extension of the sewer lines to the northwest. So I'm hoping we can reduce fees and red tape, and that will help spark some development.
So how do you initiate getting some of these things into the city budgets, into the city regulatory agencies? How do you do that?
Well, if it's a kind of a, so in that, the Sean Palmer had this idea yesterday of a 1% bonding bill to help pay for the new sewer line so that we could reduce the cost and or a cost sharing across the city. And you know, that might not be a popular idea. So there is the plan, and if you want to bend the plan, there's something called a council initiated action where you can say, I want to do things differently in this way, and you have a second person sign off on it, and then staff brings it before the city council at a meeting, and you all vote on it and say, yep, that's a great idea. Maybe we should do things a little differently. So there are council initiated actions are a way for us to bring up something new that we want to do and see if we have buy-in by the rest of the council.
How many electric buses are we going to have?
I think we bought 2.
Just 2?
I believe so. That's my understanding, yes.
And then how many of these little self-driving vehicles are we going to have?
Boy, you know, you're catching me flat-footed there. I don't know.
Okay.
I could look, I honestly don't
Does the feds pay for them mostly? You don't know.
I don't know. I'm sure that we have some cost associated with it.
Yeah.
Just like with the circulator, you know, the feds paid it, or, well, the thing is the FDA said yes to $56 million, but that's still got to go through a federal bonding, you know, budget cycle before we really get the money. And then there's some DMC funds, and I don't know if the city is pitching in anything, but we certainly will eventually inherit maintenance fees. I think something to the tune of $2 to $3 million, right? So, yeah, I think a lot of this is still being hashed out.
Okay. How about the city budget? Let's talk money.
Yeah. I was really on the fence last night about whether or not I would say yes or no to the 6.5% tax levy. And in the course of listening to all of that, I decided to say, you know what, okay. All we decided on last night was to cap it at 6.5%. And that means that it can go down but not up. And so now I'm gonna get the flip book and the budget out, and I'm gonna spend some time going through it with a fine-tooth comb to see if there are ways we can cut back something, anything. You know, it's a tough one because we had a 0% tax levy a year ago, which I think was the right thing for the former council to do. But now we're in the hole, and I don't want to cut services. So, yeah, it's a complex problem, and I need to study the actual budget line by line. I read through the budget, but I didn't look at it with that fine a grain detail. So I know it's a very unpopularly big number, and again, it's hard. It's really tough.
When you say we're in the hole, what do you mean?
I don't think we're in the, well, in order to keep services, most of what the general tax levy goes to is the general fund. And if you look at the general fund, it breaks out to be fire, police, other emergency service. But there is this 9% of other, and I want to study what that other is. I was going to ask last night, but we were already having kind of a marathon. So those are the kinds of things I'm going to look at and see. But the 6.5% tax levy really translates into, it's really hard to say how it affects any one given individual. But there was an example, if you owned a particular house at a particular price and there was a particular increase in valuation, that would translate into $25 to $50 extra. And of course, that's going to scale with the price of your home. So people that own slightly less expensive houses probably will see a little bit less of an increase in their property tax, and people that own far more expensive homes will pay more, at least in theory, I think. So.
Okay. I'm wondering what the city RPU, is that a separate budget? Because they're raising a lot of their fees, or they are proposing to. And how will that come out in the end?
Yeah, so RPU, I believe, is a separate entity, and we have someone sitting on that board. And I do believe they have a separate budget, and they pay back to the city money. It's called in lieu tax. So the city gets money back from RPU, but I do believe they have their own budget. And I don't remember the numbers, actually. So.
Okay. All right. Those are the two top interests. What are some of your other priorities that you'd like to accomplish while you're a councilman?
I'd like to make downtown more ADA compliant, more disability friendly. There is a proposal for a development in my neck of the woods. We'll see how that works out, but it's not ADA compliant. And I think there's a lot of other buildings that really we need to take a look at how disability friendly this town is. And you know, it's good in some places, not so much in others. So I'd really like to see the city step up and make sure that when we do our sidewalk fixing, that we really truly make it easy to push people around. I heard the mayor say in the heart of the city, this person was getting around in a wheelchair very easily, but then I hear the opposite from other people. The other thing I'd like to do is I'd like to see special education is a big thing for me, and I don't know if that's necessarily something I'm going to do as a council person, and more in as someone who's on the special education advisory panel. But the one can kind of help facilitate the other because people know my name. So I'm hoping to look at special education in town, which is fantastic, but see if I can work to make it even better, provide more services. You know, through community block grants. That's one thing I can do is say yes to a community block grant to someone, say like ABC or Possibilities, and make sure they have the funding they need.
Speaking of the Minneapolis City Council, they want a Department of Public Safety instead of the police department. There's no feeling like that in Rochester, is there? I mean, people are very supportive of Chief Franklin and the...
Chief Franklin is just amazing. Our
Isn't
police department.
Oh,
I love Chief Franklin. He's great.
Yeah.
Our police department is awesome.
Yeah.
And so, gosh, I really hope we never get to the point where we're going to say we're replacing the police with anything else. I think that would be a major mistake.
We interviewed him a couple of months ago, and his attitude is perfect.
Yep. He's top notch.
Wanting trust and relationships, and we're very lucky. All right, we're down to 2-3 minutes left, and I'd like to give you a chance to say something to the viewers and the voters.
Boy, I've already been very loquacious. I don't know what more I can say. Let's see. I try to be the comic relief at the meetings. I try to keep upbeat and be jovial. One thing I would ask of the people in this town is that, you know, when you become a civil servant, it doesn't mean you're now something that they stepped in. And you should see some of the emails that we all get. And I'm going to circle the wagons because I really respect my colleagues. This is not easy. Every single person on the city council deserves kudos, whether or not you agree with them or not. You know, I get grumpy with them, but then it's a new day, right? And because I love them all, because this is a tough job, and it's like a little, you know, it's really, really tough, whether or not you're making one vote or another vote, or I just hope that people, when they write emails or call, are civil. I've seen a great lack of civility in feedback from people that don't like what I've done or others have done, and there's no place for that. And for some on the city councils, it's gotten terribly bad. And so I would just ask our constituents to be a little more Socratic, a little bit more, here's why I don't like what you like, not send me an email saying I want to see bodies piling up and that I'm a bad dad. That I just tune you out, right?
Okay. What you are looking for are good ideas, right?
Yes, and if you think I made a mistake, tell me why, right? I in particular, I'm very fastidious, and when I make a judgment call and I explain it, I really try to do it, you know, using criteria or, you know, some metric or rubric. I don't try to just say, you know, my feeling is this, and so therefore. I really try to be fastidious in my explanations, and I would hope that somebody would see that and then write me. And others are on the council too. Yeah. I mean, Nick Campion, he is on all the time and really makes. I may not agree with everything, nor would anybody, but you've got to admire the way he just really thinks about an issue as an issue by itself. And I think a lot of us do that. So if I'm going to do that, if other council people are going to do that, you have to realize being under the lights and making a decision like that, that's what we asked for. But all I would ask in return is if you don't like what I said, or you don't like how I voted, or you don't like my position, don't call me racist. Don't call me this, that, and the other thing. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah. All right, Mark Bransford, thank you for your service. And we'll talk to you again maybe in about 6 months.
Yeah, that'd be great.
See how you progress.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And thank you, our viewers, for being with us this week. We'll be with you again next week, same time, same channel. Have a good week and a very good night.